The first time Arham Vale saw Zayden Cole, he was standing in the middle of a sunlit park, sleeves rolled up, hands covered in paint, laughing as a little girl smeared bright blue across his cheek. The moment was so ordinary, so gentle, that it almost hurt to look at. Arham had built an empire from steel decisions and sleepless nights, yet nothing in his powerful world had ever felt as real as that single, careless laugh beneath the morning sky. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, Touch of Kindness. Stories like this remind us that love sometimes finds us where we least expect it. It was a bright Saturday afternoon in early spring, the kind where sunlight pours generously over the city and makes even cracked sidewalks glow. Arham, the 36-year-old CEO of a rising tech conglomerate, had not planned to spend his day in Crescent Park. He had intended to review acquisition proposals in his glass-walled office downtown. But something about the weight in his chest that morning had pushed him outside, away from boardrooms and into open air. He noticed Zayden before he noticed the child. Zayden was kneeling on a picnic blanket beside a small easel, his dark hair tied back loosely, wearing a simple gray t-shirt and faded jeans. There was nothing extraordinary about his appearance at first glance. He looked like any other father spending quality time with his daughter. Yet there was a quiet steadiness in his movements, a watchfulness in his eyes even while he smiled. The little girl, around 6 years old, had her father's deep brown eyes and an infectious grin. She was painting a messy version of the sun, her laughter ringing through the park like wind chimes. Arham found himself standing there longer than he intended, pretending to check his phone while watching them from a distance. The girl dropped her brush, and Zayden quickly caught it before it touched the ground, moving with a speed that was almost too precise for something so trivial. He laughed it off, brushing it aside as though it were nothing. Later that afternoon, fate intervened in the simplest way. The girl's painted canvas caught a sudden gust of wind and fluttered across the grass, landing near Arham's polished shoes. He bent to pick it up. When he looked up, he found himself face to face with Zayden. Up close, Zayden's features were more striking. A faint scar traced along his jawline, partially hidden beneath stubble. His eyes held a depth that suggested stories untold. There was kindness there, but also something older, something forged in fire. Arham handed him the painting, their fingers brushing for a fraction of a second. A strange warmth passed between them, unexpected and disarming. Zayden thanked him with a quiet smile, introducing his daughter as Alina. Arham, unused to introducing himself without titles, simply said his name without mentioning the empire attached to it. Over the next few weeks, Arham found reasons to return to Crescent Park during the day. He adjusted meetings, delegated responsibilities, and surprised his board by taking personal time. Each visit felt like stepping into another life, one where sunlight replaced fluorescent lights and laughter replaced negotiations. He learned that Zayden was a single father. Alina's mother had passed away when she was barely 2. Since then, Zayden had devoted himself entirely to raising her. He worked part-time as a mechanic at a local garage, enough to keep their modest apartment running. There was no complaint in his voice when he spoke about his life, only quiet acceptance and a fierce devotion to his child. Arham admired that devotion more than he could admit. He had grown up in privilege but emotional isolation. His parents had valued achievement above affection. Love had been measured in expectations met, not hugs given. Watching Zayden tie Alina's shoelaces with patient care felt like witnessing a miracle. Their conversations deepened gradually. They talked about favorite books, childhood memories, and the strange pressure of trying to be strong for others. Zayden rarely spoke about his past. Whenever the topic drifted toward his earlier years, his expression would soften into something distant, and he would gently redirect the conversation. Arham sensed there was more. The way Zayden scanned crowded areas, the instinctive positioning of his body between Alina and strangers, the discipline in his posture, none of it matched the image of an ordinary mechanic. Yet Arham respected the silence. Love did not crash into them like a storm. It unfolded like morning light, slowly illuminating corners of their hearts they had long kept closed. One afternoon, as they sat beneath a flowering tree, Alina asleep against her father's shoulder, Arham realized he was no longer observing a beautiful scene. He was part of it. But love rarely comes without shadows. The first crack appeared on a seemingly normal day. Arham had invited Zayden and Alina to a charity event hosted by his company in a bright downtown plaza. It was a daytime celebration filled with music, food stalls, and local families. Zayden hesitated but agreed for Alina's sake. The event began beautifully. Alina twirled near a fountain, sunlight catching in her hair. Arham watched Zayden relax slightly, even laugh at one of the street performers. For a brief moment, everything felt perfect. Then a loud bang echoed from a construction site nearby. It was nothing more than a dropped metal beam. But in that instant, Zayden transformed. His body moved before thought. He lunged toward Alina, pulling her down and shielding her with his entire frame. His eyes sharpened, scanning exits, calculating threats. His breathing changed, controlled and rapid. It was not fear. It was training. The plaza fell silent for a second before people resumed their chatter, realizing there was no danger. But Arham stood frozen. He had seen that kind of reaction before, not in parks or charity events, but in documentaries and confidential government briefings. That night, after ensuring Alina was asleep, Arham gently asked Zayden about it. The air between them felt fragile. Zayden did not answer immediately. He stared out of the apartment window at the daylight fading over the city. Finally, he spoke with a quiet honesty that made Arham's chest ache. Years ago, before Alina was born, Zayden had served in an elite special forces unit. Missions in hostile territories. Operations that were never meant to be public. He had seen things that followed him into sleep. He had lost teammates who felt like brothers. When Alina's mother fell ill, he left the service without hesitation. After her death, he left that world entirely. He wanted his daughter to grow up far from violence, far from secrets. He had chosen anonymity. Simplicity. A life small enough to protect. Arham listened without judgment, only awe. The humble mechanic he had fallen for was a former legend in shadows. A man who had faced gunfire and explosions now worried about scraped knees and art supplies. But the revelation brought complications. Arham's world was public. Media scrutiny followed him everywhere. If reporters uncovered Zayden's past, it could drag him back into attention he did not want. Worse, it could put Alina at risk. Arham's advisors warned him subtly about background risks when they noticed his growing attachment. For the first time in his life, Arham felt torn between power and love. Days turned heavy. Zayden sensed the tension. He suggested distance, believing Arham deserved someone whose life was uncomplicated. He was prepared to step away, even if it broke him, because protecting his daughter mattered more than his own happiness. Arham spent a sleepless morning walking along the river under bright daylight, thinking about everything he had built. None of it had ever required courage like this. Mergers and hostile takeovers were simple compared to choosing love over reputation. That afternoon, he returned to Crescent Park. Zayden was there, helping Alina feed crumbs to pigeons. The scene was heartbreakingly normal. Arham walked toward them with certainty. He told Zayden he did not care about headlines or whispers. He had fallen in love not with a resume, but with a man who painted suns with his daughter and shielded her from imaginary danger without hesitation. If anything, knowing his past only deepened his respect.